on. Chair calls Susan Hayes. Susan Hayes. We show you as Susan Hayes. You're representing Village Farms and yourself, and you're neutral on the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Please proceed.
All right. My name is Susan Hayes. I am a appellate attorney by trade. I've been practicing cannabis law for about 10 years. I am the public representative to DPS's Teacup Working Group to advise it. And I also was very involved in the passage of the hemp bill in 2019 and familiar with that legislative history. I'm having passed out for you a cheat sheet to help you follow some of this language, and a little bit of glossary and a grid laying out which of these compounds are natural, intoxicating, not intoxicating, synthetic, semi-synthetic. And I'm going to clarify these terms because I've had a brief glance at the committee substitute, and my terminology is different when it's in the bill. What I mean by synthetic are things that are both novel, that is, not occurring in nature, and produced in a lab. The bill refers to that as artificial, from what I've seen. What I mean by semi-synthetic, and scratch out artificial, is something that does occur in nature but is commonly produced by converting another cannabinoid in the industry. The items outlined in red are the ones you need to worry about. I'm on the bill because it is banning a lot of non-intoxicating things and things that are useful to people and common in the industry and have been. I also brought you show and tell to see what we're talking about. We're concerned about children being attracted. This is what's in the gas stations. These are 200 milligram dummies, way too high of a dose. And my joke is if the packaging's cheesy, don't take it. Here's a drink. I'm a fan, I get it. Here's what CBD gummies look like. These are sleep gummies with a little bit of THC in them. Here's a tincture. You'll hear about full spectrum CBD today. Full spectrum means it is a very natural extract, so it contains the other minor cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, other things in the plant. Widely believed this is far better for you and more effective for children with seizures, items like that.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes, for your testimony. But you're going to get a question.
All right.
Has anybody got one? Mr. Phelan.
Well, I'd like you to continue, especially with that last product.
Yes.
Okay. That right there, is that if bill coming up later today, or HB28 were to pass, would that be legal or illegal?
It would be a crime.
That would be a crime.
Right.
And that is something that our current compassionate use program does not allow for, is that correct?
No, let me give a little historical context to make this make sense, because it is incredibly confusing.
Yes,
when
it is.
Compassionate use first passed, this was a controlled substance. It was considered marijuana. The Farm Bill and the Texas Hemp Bill changed that. It is no longer a controlled substance. And I liken this to similar to buying over-the-counter the medicine. I can buy aspirin in the store. I can buy 200 milligram ibuprofen in the store. But if I need stronger stuff, Motrin 800 milligram, I need a prescription. Teacups for the stronger stuff. This should not be a crime. There's not side effects. It's not going to make anybody sick. But for some people who have problems with their endocannabinoid system, it's a life changer. Whether that's just sleep, or that's a child who has seizures, and if you put it in a heavily regulated system like Teacup, the price goes up. And Teacup only has 3, really 2.5 licensees. It's not accessible around the state, and that also drives up the price.
What does that cost right now?
There are some that can answer that better than me, but my guess is depending on how many milligrams of CBD is in it, $30. This is only $40 because the market's been flooded with it.
So if that were in Teacup, what would it cost?
With this, I don't know off the top of my head. I do recall early on close to $100. I don't know where they are now, and I can hear people in the audience who can answer that question when they get up here.
All right, we'll ask them. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Antia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hayes, thanks for being here today. I want to understand from the chart, what I think is a helpful chart. As policymakers, what we're trying to get at here, it is your testimony that the underlying bill would outlaw non-intoxicating natural products like the full spectrum hemp, the broad spectrum hemp, the CBD, CBDA, CBDV, CBG, and I can go down that list. But those things you believe should not be outlawed, but that this bill may be overbroad and picks
Correct.
them up. Is that correct?
That is correct. And of the many ironies for the bill missing the mark, by only allowing the isolates, the CBD, CBG, and some THC, you're requiring more manufacturing and chemical alteration to strip out all these other healthy things that are in a natural extract like this in order to be compliant. And that's-
So if I'm hearing you correctly, an outcome of outlawing these things is that not only does it sort of drive it underground, it creates a perverse incentive to create more synthetic product.
I'm going to be very careful with my
Sorry, thank
vocabulary.
you. Please do. Intoxicating
And
synthetic?
how the bill defines it is synthetic because it is manipulated. I mean, I'm going to back up from even that. I don't think it falls under the bill's definition, but to just have an isolate, to just pull out the CBD, CBG, and/or THC, you have to go through more manufacturing. And the more manufacturing, the more odds for human error. And what people are getting isn't as good for them as the fully natural product. You know, and you will hear the phrase entourage effect as this testimony goes on. This plant was meant to be taken all as a whole. It works better on our bodies when it comes with the minor cannabinoids, the terpenes, the flavonoids. You know, terpenes and flavonoids are in food. They're things that are good for us. And this bill would require it to be stripped down to the bone, to just a few cannabinoids, because if I'm understanding the testimony so far, our law enforcement apparatus is overwhelmed. The better policy is to fund our forensic labs fully. Other states do this all the time, regulating cannabis. I've been studying what other states do with this with cannabis and how to regulate it for 10 years now. It is no big deal to test a full spectrum of what's in a product. Nevada does it, Canada does it, Colorado does it, Canada does it too. And it shouldn't cost $1,000 like Dishes testified. Somebody has a hell of a contract with the state to being paid that much. Because the industry does it all the time. It's also not, and you'll see on each of these products, there's a QR code. That links to the certificate of the analysis. Current Texas law from 2019 requires that each hemp product by batch, meaning a manufacturing batch. I'm sorry, Darby isn't here because he had that question about what is a batch. Be tested. That link, and this was I remember having these discussions in 2019 with Senator Perry's office so the consumers would know what they're getting. Now, there's a lot of non-compliance. That's one way I test when I'm in stores. Does the QR code work? These tend not to work. These do.
As we're thinking about the range of outcomes in regulation, I don't know if you were here when I visited with some of the state regulators, both the lab and Dishes about this. You know, I think we're trying to balance the fact that this massive market exists, right? We've heard testimony that the market exists. Products tend to find their way to market,
Yes.
right? It is our role to try to maximize the social good, right, from products finding their way to market. At the same time, do it transparently and legally in our regulatory regime. We also have to be cognizant of the fact that any market participants want to maximize their profits, right? And oftentimes will maximize profits and then socialize costs. That happens in a bunch of different industries throughout this state. And so because, and that was the reason I was visiting with the folks about the testing labs, because that is a socialized cost of this market activity, right? And so the question is, as we're trying to achieve a market equilibrium here that provides positive health benefits, a social good, aligns interests so that people do not unnecessarily socialize costs, or market participants don't socialize costs, and at the same time, not drive up the costs in the marketplace so much so that the black market then flourishes.
Correct.
Right? It's a tricky regulatory balance that we face. What is confusing to me in trying to achieve that market equilibrium is that in this bill, we would only be allowing one method of delivery system, which is relatively narrow, the can, and, for example, a beverage, yes, but then we're saying an oil, no.
Correct.
And how do we justify that in that regulatory balance that we're trying to achieve? How do you justify saying, hey, you can drink it, you can put it in your mouth and drink it, but you can't put it in your mouth under your tongue as an oil, which is the way I understand tinctures work.
I can't fathom a way to justify it. And I understand the concern about things that are attractive to children. Look at this packaging. If this isn't here, where does the child go? The boring-looking container of gummies that looks like something that's a vitamin, or the pretty can? And again, all for it here, personally. To carve off these delivery systems as a crime and this is okay makes no sense to me. There are plenty of good manufacturers and retailers in this state. Where Texas has failed is getting this regulatory regime in place. And I absolutely laud what 28 is trying to do to put a regulatory regime in place. But the state needs to do it better and needs to understand testing is something you cannot outsource out of state and be able to do it right. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. I spent some time as a general counsel of a company in Nevada as Nevada was rolling out adult use legalization, which was a great education because it was every 2 weeks, new regulations. The state had 8 licensed labs then. In the less than a year I was in Nevada, 2 of them got caught cheating. And lab fraud is an issue in the industry. And I understand the committee substitute is just in-state DEA registered labs, am I correct? DEA registered labs, fine, but there's some good labs out of state. And there is a way to control that. I know there's concern and angst that if we let out-of-state things happen, we can't regulate it. That's just not true. We already do it in the current hemp program. The current hemp program, the labs register with the Department of Agriculture, but there's no oversight. You make any lab who wants to test products who come into Texas be licensed in Texas, even if they're located in Denver. And then you've got to test them. You've got to check their work. And if you bust them cheating, yank their license, recall the products with their license number on them. That creates the economic incentive to keep people from cheating, but it also allows that market equilibrium, that the good actors can rise to the top. And I think it was, I can't remember if it was you, Chairman King, or Phelan, who had the question about in-state manufacturers being forced out, and then out-of-state manufacturers are getting Amazoned or Alibaba'd in. That's a terrible outcome. You're not going to be able to make sure the products here are safe and effective with that kind of regulatory regime.
Thanks for the answers.
All right.
Mr. Ginn has a question before we move on.
So, stuff in red that you call intoxicating and that are under the columns for semi-synthetic or artificial, and then another column under synthetic, are those allowed today or are they banned today?
I'm an appellate lawyer. I can write that brief both ways. But under the Controlled Substance Act, I think some of them are illegal, but you don't have the will in prosecutors and law enforcement to go after them. And specifically, the Controlled Substance Act has a whole paragraph on tetrahydrocannabinols other than marijuana, including, not limited to, but including Delta-3, Delta-6, et cetera. That's there. And I also get this worry from the government that if we can't keep up with all these new things they're inventing, so we should just ban everything. A sentence I've heard in the Senate side is if I can't understand it, I should ban it. if you can't understand it, you're not going to be able to ban it effectively. The state needs to understand it, and other states have already accomplished this goal by specifying you can have these naturally occurring non-intoxicating cannabinoids and a tad of THC, and everything else is no-go. It's not that hard to do, but you do also have to invest in the enforcement, get that. It's very possible to accomplish this and do what other states have already been doing without throwing these other things out because you're worried about this. But then you're just going to allow the cans.
Thank you.
Mr. Anchia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one follow-up. As we're looking to achieve this market equilibrium, what state should we be looking at for referential regulatory regime?
I'm familiar with some more than others, and one statute I have looked at more because I know a lot of work went into it is Colorado's. Colorado saw this intoxicating hemp issue coming 6 years ago. They passed a bill to create an advisory committee, staffed it with scientists, marijuana business people, hemp business people, moms who hated everything, moms who wanted it because it was, this was good for their kids with seizures, and they studied it and, let the science and facts drive the policy. And because it's hard to write a bill, once they came to a political consensus, that committee spent over 100 hours in meetings. They wrote a model bill, it passed in close to final form. And that's where I took my list of intoxicating versus non-intoxicating because I trust their work. And on the beverage side, that is newer. I can't cite a state that I know that I've studied and can say they've done it right, but it's similar. You cap your THC. You understand when THC is mixed with CBD, it's not as intoxicating. And I do think it's a great idea to take that regulatory infrastructure we already have with TABC because they have boots on the ground around the state, which Dishes lacks, and you regulate it. You use the packaging to tell you this is legit or this is not. We've been concerned about law enforcement being able to tell at a roadside, is this thing legal or not? If they're educated about what's the correct packaging for Texas, then they know this is something that came from a legitimate Texas manufacturer or retailer and not something that's been bootlegged out of state from California.
Thank you.
Mr. Raymond?
Hey, Susan. Finish telling us then, what did they do in Colorado?
Colorado did their study, did a model bill. They specify in statute intoxicating, non-intoxicating, and then what's synthetic. The way they handle the problem of new things being invented in the market, because the marketplace will be forever inventive, is if it's on the approved list of non-intoxicating, then you may produce it. If it's on the definitely intoxicating list, you may not produce it. And if it's anything new, you have to come ask the state for permission first. And it's that third category that catches new things that the legislature can't keep up with because you only meet every 2 years and the market will always be innovating faster.
So if we had the Colorado law in place in Texas, how would things be different right now?
Well, if we had had that in place the last 4 years, you wouldn't have this everywhere, for one. And, in these, most of what I've seen in stores, they're not just Delta-9, they're a cocktail of synthesized natural cannabinoids like Delta-9, but also completely novel synthesized cannabinoids that we don't have a history of human beings taking and may or may not know what it's going to do to people.
So we wouldn't have synthetic, or does Colorado have some synthetic that has been approved by the state, that what you're saying, or?
And I'm going to be, again, careful about the vocabulary words. If you mean something that's manufactured, I can't recall off the top of my head if they allow the manufacturing, and actually, as I recall, they do, because some cannabinoids are rare enough in the plant, like CBN or THCV, and even though that starts with the letters THC, it's not intoxicating. And there's some great science on it for managing weight loss, diabetes. I just saw one this last week, because I'm the kind of nerd who searches PubMed for fun, the NIH database, of THCV being used as an antipsychotic. And it is often manufactured from an existing cannabinoid because it's cheaper than trying to extract it from the plant. And that's a category that Colorado calls semi-synthetic.
So do you know, maybe the chief, I wish the chief was back up on the panel, but
Chief Nye?
yeah.
From
how-
Allen.
How the law enforcement community in Colorado feel about the existing laws in Colorado?
I don't know, but I'll find out.
It might be helpful to the
Yeah.
chairman.
Certainly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Members, are there other questions of this, of Ms. Hayes? Ms. Hayes, would you mind if Riley borrows your props for a minute so I can see them?
Yeah.
We're not popping any tops.
Did you count them?
Thank you. We'll return them to you.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I see they are gluten-free. So, Ms. Hayes,
Yes, sir.
I think you testified, like if you buy this, that QR code's gonna work,
Yeah,
correct? But if you buy this, probably not,
probably not. Or
because we really don't know what's in this.
another tell is it should be batch specific. So if you go to a certificate of analysis that's 3 years old, it's not for that batch.
Did you buy this way?
No, I
Did
actually,
it roll around in somebody's pickup?
truth be told, it's been in my bag for a while. Truth be told, I took that off of a friend of mine I put in rehab who was drinking too much and taking a lot of high dose gummies.
Okay. All right.
And
And then this tincture, that is, it is used for kids with anxiety or seizures or that kind of thing.
I've been giving the gummy form to my mother who has dementia to try to help her anxiety.
Okay. And the QR code works on this one. This is legit. This is medicine.
Yes,
This is not.
correct.
And then this is an empty one, but it was for sleep gummies.
Yeah, those are my favorite sleep gummies. That's why it's
That's
empty.
why it's empty. I
Yeah.
got it. So what's the milligram in this one? 30 gummies.
My reading glasses aren't that good.
Evidently mine aren't either.
May I approach?
Yes, please.
That is 5 milligrams of CBN,
Okay.
25 of CBD, and 5 milligrams of THC in full spectrum. So it's going to have minor cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids in it.
Okay. Thank you for that. Let me sit that down there. All right. At this time, sir, Mr. Metcalf has a question for you. Duet.
Thank you.
Just to keep us on track, please say your name again.
Susan Hayes.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. So, just so I'm clear, you can buy this where?
I probably got that in a gas station, or I may have gotten it in a liquor store. I can't remember. But I took it out of my refrigerator this morning.
It's still cold.
Yeah.
So, you can buy this at a package store, correct?
Yeah, I believe that Specs and Total Wine carry that brand as well.
And you can buy it at a supermarket, gas station.
I haven't seen them in supermarkets, but I have seen them in gas stations and in a fancy hotel gift shop.
Where do you buy these? Like, is this at a gas station too? Or?
No, I got those from my client, but they also ship it online, and I believe they sell to some boutique stores in Texas.
The vape shops that I see everywhere, do they carry this kind of stuff?
Typically, no. And I go in them and look and see, and you don't see what I think of as a boutique hemp shop, higher quality product in most of the vape shops. You see things that I can tell came from out of state and aren't from Texas manufacturers.
Where's the eyedropper thing?
It's down there.
Okay, that's fine. Keep it down. Where do you get that? Is that
The
prescription?
tincture's also a Village Farms subsidiary product. So that is sold online in Texas, and I think also sold through some boutique stores.
But that's not considered in our regulated industry part as far as our compassionate use program?
No, because of it's a hemp-derived product with less than 0.3% THC. And absolutely agreed that any consumable percentage makes no sense. It should be milligram caps. And same with the compassionate use program, which is currently at 1% THC.
And what is that one?
In terms of percent or milligrams,
Percent, I guess.
less than 0.3%.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've got one more question. And I do appreciate you bringing this stuff because, as you can tell, we're not, some of these people may be well-versed in this and are lying about it, but I'm not. I would like to know, though, because you mentioned these vape shops. I've heard a lot of talk about vape pens coming in from other states and even other countries, and largely China. I noticed you did not bring that example up. Are those a problem?
Vape pens are what scare me the most.
Okay.
And let me give you an example. And I helped put on a cannabis policy conference at A&M last fall and moderated a panel on lab testing. And again, labs are the key to all of this. I encourage y'all to talk to Peter Stout at the Houston Crime Lab. He's very knowledgeable. And we had the former head regulator from Nevada and a gentleman from a private lab who's been studying mass data points from lab testing from other states, named Yasha Khan. And the question I posed to them is, let's say you've got a couple high school kids hitting a black market vape, one of them came up with, behind high school, and they collapse, frothing, maybe seizing. And I wasn't taking that example to be fanciful. I was thinking about the Uvalde issue, which happened before the pandemic, where some people around the country were severely injured and died from bad vape pens that turned out to be black market THC vape pens adulterated with vitamin E acetate. And my question to them is, if that happens, what tools does the state of Texas have in its toolbox to figure out what those kids just took so they get proper medical treatment, trace it back to its source so it can be removed from the stream of commerce? And the answer I got was, goose egg, nothing. I'm really shocked to learn how little we have in terms of tools for dangerous drugs that are on the streets, whether it's the overdoses that were happening in downtown Austin a year and a half ago or so from bad street drugs, and in particularly vape pens. And vape pens are scarier to me because you can put anything in them. And we currently so underfund our forensic labs that they don't have the tools to effectively and quickly test for mystery substances. Mystery substances are harder to test for than, I know this is a CBD tincture and I'm looking for CBD and their level. That's the public health danger. It's not hemp products and not natural hemp products. It's the other things. And that's where the state should be focusing its efforts. And I'm barely skimming the committee substitute because I finally got somebody to slip me a copy. But I heard you mention there was some tax money in there. Send some of that to the forensic crime labs. That's how, instead of doing this backdoor grant monies to local law enforcement, beef up the labs in the first place, because that will help not just black market bad cannabis products, or adulterated cannabis products, I should say, but also our state's issue with fentanyl, rape kits, everything else.
So one thing you just said, and I'm glad we went down this line of questioning, because unknown origin vape pens seem to, they certainly cause me the most concern when I see kids on these things and they don't know what's in them. Besides whether it's the synthetic hemp or what else is in that thing, what else is making it fire up and create the vape, right? And what we are seeking to do, just to be clear here, it appears to me, even on the products that you showed us, and I really appreciate you bringing them. I mean, anytime we get that kind of visual aid, I think it's helpful. But it appears to me the products that you have shown us that are legit.
Yeah.
The packaging, the amount is safe. It appears to be safe. The other stuff doesn't appear to be safe. We're seeking to get rid of everything that's unsafe. And while I do understand the argument of you're picking the drinks over these other things, it's my opinion that we have an elephant here. And trying to eat the elephant more than one bite at a time also causes a problem. But the packaging on the drink and the testing that has gone into that product seems to be far above this.
Certainly.
Is that correct? Or the vape pen that we don't have an example of, and I don't need one. I just would that be fair?
It'd be fair, but it's also fair to say for the established hemp product companies who make gummies or tinctures, other delivery forms, they're ahead of the beverages. They've been doing it longer.
Okay. Well, here's the just for a point of clarification. Then Mr. McQueenie has a question because you asked about the tax and the fee money. A third would go to TABC, a third would go to DSHS, and a third to support opioid and narcotic response by local law enforcement. So that's what just clarification. That's what the sub calls for how the money to be split up. Mr. McQueenie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding these vape pens, do you have a suggestion for the illicit vape industry as it pertains to this product line? I mean, is there a suggestion out there of what you're seeing? I mean,
Sorry, a suggestion
a
to the
suggestion
industry
from
or to the
regulation or a
state?
suggestion on how to enforce it? I mean, it seems that these vapes are a massive problem. I agree with the chairman. And how do you know what's in that vape, if it's a legitimate one or a THC one, if it's from China, if it was made in, Fort Worth? Do you have any suggestions, or is there any way to follow up on that?
And you
If
also
that's
have
the
a
bad
problem
actor.
with teenagers getting in serious trouble and being charged with felonies because they do what teenage boys do, and that is dumb things. And
Got a
yeah,
teenage boy, I'm well aware.
I used to run around with a lot of them when
And
I
I'm
was
going
a
to pull this
teenager.
footage up for, no.
And that's unfair. This harsh criminalization on kids or anyone else who isn't getting the consumer education. And there are a wide spectrum of vape pens. There are cheap vape pens from China that maybe the temperature the product's heated at makes a big difference. That was part of the issue with vitamin E acetate. When vitamin E acetate is heated to a certain temperature, it converts to a very dangerous substance, and it should never be ingested into the lungs. Some terpenes, when heated to high temperatures, can become benzene. So the pen itself, the mechanics, are also important, not just the stuff that's going inside of it or the oil that's going inside of it. To effectively regulate including ban things, you have to be able to regulate in the first place, if that makes any sense. Because you're never, ever, ever going to get rid of it all by banning it. But when you know what a good product looks like, when law enforcement knows, one issue when hemp passed, I tried to work on, hey, can we educate local law enforcement so some poor truck driver with a load of hemp biomass doesn't go to jail? There was no system for educating them. It's just whether the random continuing education class they went to would teach them. I couldn't get DPS to put on their website what the rules were. You can visually tell the difference between these two. With vape pens, that is harder, but if you've got a system where they're accessible to the people who use them and like them, that's where more of the market is going to go. That may not keep it out of the hands of kids, but it's better than them ordering things off Alibaba where we don't know where they came from. And I wish I had a magic answer to that. I think that's probably the hardest
It's
problem
pretty
to
clear
solve.
that with your line of answers, that you are very concerned about these vape pens and the illicit market there and the ability to regulate it. So that's, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Phelan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I have a good idea what's going to happen to you if you take that gummy right there.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What happens to the consumer with the oil? Is that something you take and you can drive a car, or you can go teach a class, or, I mean, what does that do to the average person?
This one is CBD with some CBN. And how it affects people depends on their own chemistry. It also depends, and this is true of any cannabinoids, it also depends on our own endocannabinoid system. You know, my running joke is my mother and Willie Nelson have a very different endocannabinoid system. People who have severe medical issues, and I'm going to take THC as an example, because these aren't intoxicating products at all. And this goes to dosing. And I know you'll have a cap in this bill. There's a teacup bill with some caps in it. What is an appropriate dose for people depends on their personal body chemistry and their physical condition. And I'll give you an example. I've been doing this work. I've gotten to know a family in East Texas who had a daughter with severe Tourette's. Couldn't leave the house for 2 years. Her body ticking was so violent when she's 13, 14 years old. And they gave her THC oil illegally. And it took 25 milligrams a day to get her out of that condition. But that dose did not make her high. 25 milligrams would put me in bed for a week. And then once she came out of that condition, she takes 5 milligrams a day to maintain. 5 milligrams of THC alone would make me plenty high, doesn't make her high, because her endocannabinoid system's out of whack. And the cannabinoids coming in evens her up. Now, if I already have an even cannabinoid system, it's going to make me a little high, depending on the dose. CBD does have, people misuse the term psychoactive. Psychoactive doesn't mean make you high. It means it affects how you feel. CBD can change how you feel. It makes people feel better. The first time I took a fairly high dose of it drinking a tea at a boutique off 6th Street, and as I was driving myself home across the river and thought, did this make me feel different? I realized, oh, I'm not all pissed off at the traffic. You know, it just sort of literally makes you chill out a little bit and relax a little bit.
So back, I believe our compassionate use program started about 2015.
Yes, 2015.
We have not expanded it very much.
No.
It's very expensive, very
Yes.
limited entry. I'm very, I was a freshman in the House voting for compassionate use. Growing up, I didn't know the difference between oregano and weed, but I knew it was the right thing to do. You talk to individuals who have severe disabilities, and it could have been a game changer. Now, I don't think we're there yet with our own compassionate use program, but it does certainly seem like there are products currently on the market that are legal now, maybe not legal at the end of this session, that fill in the gaps of the compassionate use program. Is that a fair statement?
That is absolutely a fair statement. And the testimony on these bills in the Senate, or the Senate SB3, almost every witness talked about medical use. And it's not that they need to be in compassionate, the teacup program, because it's this, or it's this with a little bit of THC. That's not going to make anybody high. It doesn't need to be overregulated, because overregulation means excess cost, and that drives people back into the black and gray markets.
So we're trying to straddle a recreational use versus a medicinal use in a lot of, at least in my mind. I don't want to walk into a store and see candy and chips and obviously marketed towards children and minors. No one wants to see that. Anyone in this room wants to see that. So drawing the line is going to be difficult, because we've been doing this for almost 3 hours, and I'm still not sure what we're talking about. Your chart was very helpful, but I think we got a long ways to go in understanding this. And again, I don't see minors going into a store and wanting that bottle of oil if it's not going to have more of a recreational impact on them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. This is mineral water, by
It looks a lot like this.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Smithy has a question.
So which of those products in front of you has a THC content, or,
That has a whole lot.
and what form is it? Is it a Delta 8 or 9?
This has multiple forms. The front of the label has Delta 9 and HHC, which is a completely synthetic form. And I think if I hit the QR code, I'd pick up some more. I can't. I've looked at it before, but I can't remember which. This drink is 5 milligrams of THC and 10 milligrams of CBD. And like I said, when you take those together, CBD softens the intoxicating effect of THC. So I liken this to maybe a 6%, say, ABV beer or pint. My favorite sleep gummies, and I will fight to the death for them, has THC in it as well, but with 5 times as much CBD, back to that softening effect.
So when you
And-
say THC, what form of THC?
Delta 9.
Okay. And Delta 9 is usually not synthetic, right? It can be.
It can be converted from other cannabinoids,
Yeah.
which is what the bill calls synthetic and what my chart calls semi-synthetic or artificial, or it can be just extracted from the cannabis plant.
Okay. And in that case, it's a natural
Correct.
occurring, okay.
Yes, and then this CBD CBN oil, because it is full spectrum, it's going to test positive for THC, but it has very small amounts in it. And the science and the strong, sort of consumer belief is that when you take a little THC with the CBD, it makes it work better and it makes it more effective.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Members, other questions? Ms. Hayes? Mr. Mack?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate you being here, and your little cheat sheet is very informative. I know very little about this world on this stuff, but I think our original intent was, back whenever we did the compassionate use program, was for the non-intoxicating stuff to be on the market in a regulated form, if I remember correctly. But I appreciate your testimony today.
Okay.
Thanks for being here.
Okay. Members, further questions? Ms. Hayes? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Record shows Benjamin Meggs with representing Bayou City Hemp Company, and you are neutral on the bill, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman King and members.